desk drumming. Hey guys, my name is Matt Workman and this is Cinematography Database Show, and in this episode we're going to be breaking down the cinematography of Sistar, Touch My Body. Touch My Body. If you heard the song, you'd understand why I called it Touch My Body. That's how they say it. Because they're Korean.
Touch my body, touch my body, touch my body, touch my body. I know you want it. 넌 내 곁으로 와. 내가 준비한 건 달콤한 초콜릿 좀 부드럽고 때론 뜨거워지는 너만을 위한 날 포에.
Great. So if you've never seen K-pop videos before, which are short for Korean pop music videos, then welcome to the internet. I'll be your guide today, talking about Korean pop videos. Go check out the whole music video if you haven't seen it. There's, of course, a great behind-the-scenes breakdown video. Well, it's not this is the breakdown video. There's a cool behind-the-scenes video that shows a lot of other stuff. And they're interesting, you know, in Korea, and I have some friends that work in the K-pop industry in Korea, and they produce this kind of stuff, and it's really interesting to hear about how other people in the world shoot music videos, because the way that they shoot it and the things they do in the things that they do in Korea, it's a little bit different. Yet there's a lot of things that are familiar, and the thing, of course, that's universal about any music video, no matter where it's produced, is the cinematography. And of course, that's what we're going to be talking about. The cinematography of Sistar, Touch My Body. We are going to start this thing right now. So here is the first setup, and this is the setup that I call the pool setup. This is my favorite setup. It's really cool. I said setup a lot. What is it? So to start, you know, what we're looking at here is a blue sky. You know, that's the first thing that's here. We have a blue sky, and it's reflected in this kind of shallow water pool here. And getting this reflection is actually pretty tricky to do. I did a commercial recently where I didn't get this reflection where I wanted it, but we made it work. So to start, this is in a stage. Okay, so we're not outside. I don't think anybody really thought this was outside, but what essentially this is called a translate back here. This thing, that's a translate. And it's basically a big painting. Like this thing is probably like 100 feet wide by like 40 feet, 60 feet tall. It's a big painting, and you wrap it around and you front light it. And it looks like that. It looks like a sky. It's really cool. And what the overall art direction of this set is, what it reminds me of, I think there's a set in like Greece, like Mykonos, Greece or something like that, somewhere in Europe. It could be Italy, somewhere where like there's a lot of fashion photography happening. And there's this, I don't know if it's a set, I think it's architecture. There's this kind of, there's this place in Europe where there's these big white walls, and they're much bigger than this. So this is kind of like a forced perspective thing. And there's these big pools of water. And of course there's this big blue sky, and it's really beautiful, and photographers come there from all over the world, and they're essentially just using the sky and the sun and these big white structures, and they just do these like really aggressive and very cool high fashion photography shoots. And I'll try to find some examples of that maybe in the show notes or something like that. But if you know what I'm talking about, by all means, please link me to what that is. I've seen it in a ton of fashion spreads, and I've seen it, I think, in some music videos too. And what this is basically building that in a stage. So we have blue skies, white walls, and some interesting studio lighting. Honestly, it's what they've tried to do is recreate the sun and the skylight. So we have pretty much. I'm going to do this now. This is my new version here. So what I can do here is I'm going to draw a sun, right? And full disclosure, I have a 2.5-year-old right now and a 5-month-old. As of recording this, she just turned 5 months. So I read a lot of children's books, so this might explain why there's a yellow sun on the top of this screen. And so what they're doing is that they're recreating sunlight that's going like this. I guess yellow was the color. So we have sunlight coming from this direction. And when I say sunlight, there's essentially one large hard light source. And when I say hard light, soft light, that's something that I'm going to have to make a pretty in-depth course about, because there's a lot of misinformation about what hard and soft light means. And honestly, the language of cinematography is just a little bit fuzzy. It's a little bit too generic for my liking, and I'm kind of working on that, is building like building on top of the language that we have already to make it a little bit more accurate and a little bit easier for everyone around the world to all use the same language and have it mean the same thing to everybody. But when I say hard light source, what I really mean is that it's a small light source. And it's also farther away. It's pretty far away. And what that does, that allows the beams of light to come at a more parallel angle. And that's really what I'm talking about, especially in this case when I'm saying hard light. So we have this hard light that's coming from the top right of frame. And the way that I can prove that to you that it's hard light, I'm going to grab some blue here, is that look at this shadow here. And then same thing on her leg. And then it's hard to see here, but we'll see when we get closer that the Terminator shadow, which is kind of like if this was in shadow, the Terminator would be this line here. It's like the point where it goes from being bright to dark. That's that point. When we look at the shadow, it's very defined and it's very sharp, and that is basically the sign that there's a hard light casting that. And the hard light source is one small relative to the subject and also very far away. And those things are related, of course. So we have this hard sunlight source, and the sun is very hard. And that's what they're using in this stage. Now, what's unique about this and why you couldn't really do this outside is that if you look at the contrast ratio, how low contrast the shadows are, like in there, like especially like this type of shadow, it's very low contrast. It's very almost like 1-to-1, like key to fill ratio. And that's something you can really only do in a stage, because the sunlight, I need to start working on lux and foot candles and not T-stops. But for now, I'm going to say like the sun is like T88 or T44. Or even higher. It's really bright. I should start using lux, because the sun is a kind of a finite, definable amount of brightness. It should be just defined in lux. Remember that, Matt. Use lux when we're talking about light sources. Basically, because the sun is so bright, you could never have this much fill on a scene this big. It would be almost impossible. I mean, you'd be talking like 50 18Ks or more, or 100K suns to try to fill in a scene this big, to make the shadows this light. It'd be really difficult in real life, but in the stage we have that. So that was a lot of talking about the sun, and let's look at the stage real quick. I'm going to grab some blue, I guess. These walls, and they are kind of like this forced perspective thing where like they are trying to make it seem like this set goes further back into the distance because they've angled them down, and that kind of makes you feel like it's this one perspective. This 1 point perspective set. So there's a little bit of trickery going on there. It's not so strong here. But these walls are very matte. They're very diffuse. They don't have a lot of specular. They're not very shiny. And that's cool. And it's a nice look. It's kind of like they're painted, like they're stucco or something like that. But then this surface here, down there, that's where my screen is. I can't show that. But this surface here and this surface here and the surface that they're standing on, very reflective. You can see an almost like, perfect reflection of them in that surface. And that's very cool. It's a very music video effect to do that for the dance floor. It does a couple things. And what else is going on? Of course, we have the water. We talked about the reflection. So the last light source that I want to call out is we have our sunlight source, and we have a gigantic amount of fill light happening in the scene. But also up here, again, the light is not yellow. It's just so that you can see it. There's this backlight coming from here. And you can see it in her hair, and her hair. And if it wasn't against white, you could kind of see it on their arms and their shoulders. So there's this backlight coming. So even though the sun is coming from this direction, there's still backlight. And what do we call that type of lighting? We call that music video lighting, where there's the sun, but there's still backlight. Okay, and it looks good. And the last thing I want to call out is that I already drew all over this thing. I drew all over you. Let's make a smiley face. What I want to call out is that in this sphere surface over here, it's a big beach ball and it's shiny. When there's things like this in your scenes, or if they're in someone else's scenes, this is the thing that's going to tell you about the lighting. And VFX people actually use this to dissect and recreate real lighting in CG. So we look at this Terminator shadow that's happening here. But more importantly, we have this little circle. I don't know if you can see this on YouTube. There's this little white circle, and that's a specular highlight. And that specular highlight is a reflection of the sun source over here. So the light that's giving this, wow, this diagram got really messy. The light that's coming from here, that's doing this hard shadow, this shadow here too, and the shadow that's there, and here, and you get it. That's the reflection of that light source. That's the specular highlight right there. And then this one right there is the specular highlight of the backlight that's up there. So when we're dissecting and we're analyzing scenes, you want to look at 1, the shadows, and 2, you want to look for signs of specular highlights. And the specular highlight in an eye of a person, that's an eye light. Okay, so that was a long time in this slide, but now it's going to go a little bit quicker through this setup. So, another great wide shot of this scene. Really cool set design. Like I said, it's kind of like that Greece infinity pool setup or architecture that exists. Here you can kind of see a little bit more of like the the seams, but you'll see that this surface is reflective. That's a reflection of the set, and then this one also reflective, and then you can also see the drop shadow coming from the light that's up here. Pretty cool stuff. This whole thing is basically covered in, likely not actually plexi. I used to think that these sets were made out of plexi. Sometimes they are. In LA, they use a lot of plexi. But what I've been using in New York, and what I think they're using here is there's this basically these big rolls of like plastic that roll out, and they're very reflective, and you can seam them together. But then again, maybe this is a plexi panel. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's very reflective white, and one of the big reasons you use something that's reflective like this is to get reflections, of course, but also because you don't have to light it directly. If it was diffuse, like these things, you have to hit these things with light. Whereas these, because of the way light works, is you're actually just getting the reflection to the camera of the background. So you don't have to light them like directly. You kind of light what's behind them, and that lights the floor. It's a cool trick. It's an economy thing. It has a cool effect, Another cool shot. These are all screens from the actual music video. This is a very low angle, and it's all water. It's like half water and then half sky. So it's pretty cool. They put the horizon right through the middle. I like this one. And then, okay, so here's our first behind the scenes setup. So let's start tearing this up. Now that I look at this light, I thought this was this must be the backlight, though I'm really not clear about exactly what this is. But this is doing, I think, the backlight for the whole scene, but it's a weird perspective. It's really weird. And now that I look at this set, I realize that this is not a translate at all. They just painted onto a 3-wall cyc. That's pretty cool. That's a fun job for the art department, right? Let's paint this like 100-foot 3-wall cyc like the sky. That's cool. I think that's cool. So again, we have a hard light coming from somewhere. I don't know what it was. I would guess like a 20K Fresnel. Something like that. I would guess that up here, out of frame that we don't see, this is a Mole Richardson or whoever, whatever manufacturer they use in Korea. Up here, hidden away, and it's shooting this very directional light in this direction. So those are our two main light sources, and then we can talk about this too. This here, I'll draw through what this really looks like, is another 20K, probably a similar size to this. And it's essentially bouncing into this 12 by of looks like diffusion, but I would have thought it would have been ultra bounce. But it's bouncing into this, and it's making all of this very soft light coming back into the scene from a very frontal angle as well. And that's going to give you that almost like 1-to-1, very commercially high key type of lighting. So that's a look at this. You can kind of also see here very cool. It's a bad color. The reflections in the plexi, and then also you can look at the shadows here cast by that backlight. We have a Mole or a Richter fan. I don't know if they're called Richter fans in Korea, but this is called a Richter fan in the States, and it makes wind. Makes a lot of wind. It's like a human-sized fan makes human-sized wind. Human-sized wind. I don't think that's a real word. I don't think that's a term I'm going to use other than this episode. Here I want to talk about the Jimmy Jib. Now, when I watched this music video, so if you haven't watched it, really, you go watch the video first. The camera moves are pretty cool. They're pretty dynamic, and I was 100% sure that this was Techno Crane. I just knew it. I knew it. I was like, this is a Techno Crane. Of course it's Techno Crane. They do it so big in Korea. They have 50-foot Techno Cranes on every commercial or music video. Turns out it's a Jimmy Jib. Now, I'm not going to lie. I have a lot of friends who are... Touch the mic. I have a lot of friends who are Jimmy Jib operators. I've worked with a lot of Jimmy Jib operators, but in the States, Jimmy Jibs are kind of seen as an ENG kind of event type of jib, and I never really used them for like commercials and music videos because I'm a snob. Okay, I like to control the head, and Jimmy Jibs don't really allow you to do that. So I've always kind of not used them or considered even using them for a music video like this. I was like, oh, it has to be a Techno Crane. But watch this music video, watch the camera moves, and here it is. This is one of the reasons I wanted to break this down. Let's grab some blue. This Jimmy Jib, which is I think like a 23-foot or something like that, they're doing all the moves, and it's like this little tiny jib on a dolly track. So the jib moves back and forth, it swings around. It's all Jimmy Jib, and I'm so impressed with that, and I'm so impressed with whoever this guy is. He's killing it. This guy is killing the Jimmy Jib game for music videos. Also, sorry, I don't know who the director or the DP was on this. If you guys know, tell me, and I'll shout them out next time, and I'll make sure that gets done right. But I couldn't find who directed and shot this because I live in the States and I don't speak Korean, though I know some people that may have known. But if you guys find out, you guys tell me. Moving on, we're going to try to get to the next setup. This has gone a little bit long. Another awesome, cool shot of the Jimmy Jib. I mean, there's so much happening here. It's so cool. The things I just want to call out again are just like, if this key's coming from here, look at the shadow, very defined and hard. I want to know what that key light was. It had to be like a 20K or something like that. Just a cool set. So cool. Look at this reflection down here. That's cool. And here's our dude doing the gripping the Jimmy Jib. So he's going to be pulling it back and forth while the other guy is controlling the head and the arm from the back. So cool. This might be the coolest Jimmy Jib job I've ever seen. Very awesome. Let's talk about some settings here. This is crazy to me. This right here is crazy. So they're shooting with an Alexa. This is an Alexa. They're shooting 2K, and everyone looks at 709 because, Rec 709, that lookup table on the Alexa, it just looks good. I mean, to me, I have it memorized. I use the 709 LUT almost on every shoot. So here's a little bit of ad-libs. So again, they're shooting 48 frames per second so that it's slow motion. Okay? Pretty straightforward. They're using actual daylight. So this makes me think that they're using HMIs on set. So those are HMIs. Those aren't 20Ks. And that's probably like an 18K doing the hard light now. Okay? So take back all that other stuff about it being tungsten. I guess that's just me. They're using daylight because they're balanced to daylight. They rate the camera at 250. Now, a lot of people rate the Alexa 800. That's kind of the native. The reason you would rate it at 250 is to reduce grain. And it actually puts more detail in the shadows. So that's interesting. That's an interesting approach. That's really interesting. I'm not sure exactly even what to tell you about that, but that's cool. But here's the bananas part. Let's do this. I'm going there. I'm going this far to do this. That's a banana. Here's the bananas part about this is they're shooting at a 22.5 shutter. If I'm not mistaken, the shutter goes 180 is normal. 90 is pretty sharp. 45. Now I do 45 sometimes. Rob does 45 on music videos. You divide 45 in half. It's 22.5. So these guys are shooting I've never shot 22.5. That's crazy. That's crazy. And on top of it, they're shooting 250 and slow-mo. There's a lot of light on this set, and these are my kind of guys. That's how I like to light. If you've ever seen anything that I've shot, especially recently, I light a lot of my commercials to T44, and these are like 40 by 20 sets, like big sets. T44, because you can do stuff like that. You can get into the high speed. You can go to 1,000 frames per second if you needed to, which a lot of the stuff I do has to go there. So, yeah, check those settings out, guys. I'm gonna try to move quickly through this. I think this is already going kind of long. Just another alt setup in this same set. It's a straight down angle. Again, the hard light, very cool. It's supposed to feel like sun, and it's straight down, and it's looking through water. Cool shot. Cool shot. This is just a great angle of the that just shows the shadow. Like, see how hard this shadow is? That's a beauty thing, man. That's a beauty type of lighting, is if you can get away with this hard shadow. And again, in her eyes, I hate to this makes it look like I'm making fun of her, but I'm trying to call out there's these eye lights in her eye, and that's the key light. And there's always this relationship between the position and the size of that eye light to the quality of the shadow under her chin. And maybe I'll just hide this because those drawings are hurting. Look at the eye light and look at the chin shadow. Those things are always related. Eye light, chin shadow. You're gonna develop a sensitivity to those two things. And emotionally, how you read someone's face and their emotions and how they look, a lot of it comes down to eye light and chin shadow. That's really what you're doing. And I talk a little bit about that in one of my the tutorials. We talk about the key light height and how that relates to the chin shadow and the eye light. And that's something I've really started to really watch on like movies, commercials, It's out there, and I'm actually working on a guide. I'm just working on a lot of things, but I'm working on a guide that kind of like really puts that together in a packageable way for you guys. Moving on here, just another monitor shot, again with the craziest settings I've ever seen in my life. 250 and 22.5. That is bananas. Just a cool shot of the monitor. I like that. And last but not least here, this setup is just, it's cool. A lot of the shots were a little bit more telephoto, and this is just a wide shot, just really close, very cartoony. It's a funny shot, and it's cool. I liked it. Okay, so let's move on to the pink set is what I'm calling this. Gonna hide that. Pink set. Now, why would you call this the pink set? So this is a pink cyc wall, more or less. The floor is very matte, so it's not pink plexi. That's a bad color. So there's no reflection happening here. There's no reflection into the ground like you would expect from a plexi floor. So that's on purpose. And the back wall also, this very flat color. And that's what you get when you have, what's the word? Diffused or matte colored, matte surfaces. There's no reflection. It's a very flat tone, like pretty much anywhere in this, I can do this actually, is, oh, that's not gonna work. Anywhere in here is essentially the same color, the same tone. As opposed to now this stuff, this plexi letters here, these are cool. Plexi letters like this are a pain in the ass to make. And I've done commercials where I don't know if I should talk about, I've done commercials where we've done plexi letters and they didn't come out this well. And that was a problem. I'll say that much. But these are pretty cool. They're big. Look how tall that letter is. Art department people, you know how hard it is to make plexi letters like this. It's a pain. But what's interesting about these is that you can see is that because they're reflective, you can see the key sources in them. So that's always what I start looking at instantly. So in this here, that looks like the frame of that looks like the arm of a diffusion frame. Here's the key light. Pretty cool. It's a cool setup. This is real. This stuff at the top, this stuff here, that's a real set piece with maybe a little bit of an extension at the top. But this is a very high key lighting setup again. I personally like high key lighting. I mean, I really like high key lighting, and that's what most of my work is right now. Someday I'll grow up and shoot some dark movies or something like that. But for right now, I really like high key lighting, and I guess you can kind of see that in the type of stuff I've been breaking down lately. So yeah, high key lighting, and we're gonna take a look at how they did that. So color correction does a lot, right? This is always interesting to me. It's like, here's the behind the scenes view, which is kind of like your everyday iPhone photo type of look. Look at the color of the plexi, and look at the color of the wall, and then we go back to the final. Colorists. Colorists are a thing. Colorists make you look good. Go hug your colorist today. Yeah, so this is a great behind the scenes photo. To get the high key lighting, you turn on a lot of lights, guys. I mean, I like turning on lights, and that's what you do. So we've got a whole jungle of space lights up here. The orientation doesn't even really matter that much. I mean, it does, and you can do it right and wrong a little bit. Essentially, they have a bunch of 6K space lights up here, all up on it. You turn them all on, it's like, whoa, and everything just gets this even light on it. That's like 90% of the job done. If this damn fan wasn't in the way, there's a frame over here, this 12 by frame. Let's grab some pink. This frame is here, and it's all lit up. There's probably a 20K behind it, and I'm gonna hide this again. Back here, there's a couple of gem balls and a whole bunch of other things happening, bunch of big soft lights. That's more or less how this is happening. Just very, big soft lights from the front, soft lights from the top. Pretty straightforward, and I love this type of lighting, you know. So don't let anyone talk bad about high key lighting, guys. I love high key lighting. And let's see, the last two things I'm going to call out are the edge lights. So if you go back to this, they're edge lit. So she has an edge light, doesn't quite get to her. She's edge lit here. So it's a very soft front light and a hard back edge light. Does that sound familiar? Does soft front light and hard edge lights, does that sound like something you might have seen on Cinematography Database? I wrote a guide about this type of lighting, how you do it on a much smaller scale. And I talk about, in the blog post that goes with it, the first time I discovered this type of lighting and started to do it is the first time I started to make money as a DP. So I'm just saying it like, it's a thing. And if you want to do this type of stuff, knowing that formula, it's a good idea. So let's kill that. And then the last thing here we're gonna call it for this setup is there's like a 5K or something like that. I don't know, oh no, are they HMI for this? I don't know. Regardless if it's HMI, if it's tungsten, it doesn't actually really matter. It's just a large light source coming through a 4x of what looks to be opal or something like that. Fairly big light source, so it's like it pretty much filled up a 4x4 frame, and that's just going to edge light them. So edge light here, edge light them, and then same thing. You can see they're getting flared by it. Same thing happening over here. So again, you can actually go find on cinematography.com, the forum, me back in the day asking about how you do this type of lighting, and people didn't really give me a great answer. But I've since learned how to do it, and I do this type of lighting like all the time. So this is one way of approaching it. So we're moving on to our last setup, and like I said, on every time I do my last setup for this show, getting sad. It's sad to see you go. It's sad to see you go. So this setup is kind of a mix of a lot of different lighting, and I really like it. And there's some cool stuff to take away from it. So when I see this up here, this is not a good color. When I see this big neon sign, I'm instantly reminded of the Justin Bieber music video. What do you mean? If you haven't seen that breakdown, I would check it out. It's been kind of popular lately. We have this red neon sign, and maybe that's lighting the whole scene. I'm not sure if that neon sign's bright enough. They might be hitting the back wall with some red, but essentially it's motivating everything. It's like, boom, there's I don't know what that is. It's like a stereo or an Etch-a-Sketch with Mickey Mouse ears on it with a crown. I don't know what that shape is. It looks like a stereo to me, like a boombox. But it's kind of like, it sets the tone for the whole thing. This looks like a house to me, but it's kind of, I'm calling it a club because it's club lighting. And we'll talk a lot about club lighting as we go on with this series and courses that I'm making and that sort of thing. Club lighting is really interesting. And it's actually really practical because there are lighting designers that light clubs for a living. And it's so important. If the lighting is not on point at a club, people are not going to dance. People are not going to get crunk. That's not going to be any fun. So the lighting is really important. And as a DP, if you're going to have to make that type of lighting, you should understand it. And I spent years learning about club lighting, like both real world club lighting and then how you do it for music videos as well. I've lit a lot of clubs before. So let's talk about it again. Again, very similar color palette. We have red, neon, and green over here. And I guess these are just like green neons on the wall and a red neon. And you know what? I bet they ISO'd up to like, actually I think there's a photo of the ISO. We'll find out. I bet they ISO'd up to like 800. So you just turn the neons on and they light the scene. Maybe there's a couple other lights to help reinforce it, but that's about it. So we're not going to talk about the light on them just yet. But essentially to light this, just like Justin Bieber, the Justin Bieber set, the hotel set, red neon, green neon. Job kind of done. And the light just mixes together and you get this red, green thing going on. And it looks cool. Now, also, more like the Ariana Grande video, if you look at her, this girl, she has blue light on her, and it's actually black light because if you look at the white that's here and the white that's back there and there, it is iridescent, it's glowing. And that's a sign of black light. And there's definitely a whole lot of black light in the scene, and we'll get there in a second. So that's how they lit the background. And this is a cool way of doing it. So what I would call this lighting when you're doing this is that there is a black light wash. So everything is getting hit with black light. So we look at this here, her, the wall maybe, the back wall. Everything has this black light on it. And certain materials and certain colors like white are going to glow. And everything else gets kind of muted into this almost desaturated blue color. And that's what happens when you hit things with blue light and record them with a CMOS camera. Or even the CCD cameras rendered light, black light that way as well. So that's what they start with. It's a big black light wash. And then they basically added these colored neons. And that's how they lit the whole background. Now, if you had left it like that, everyone would look like this. And like that. Very purple and kind of purple. They look like Blue Man Group. But what we have here is that you'll see the four main artists are not getting hit with this black light. Well, in reality, they actually are getting hit by the black light because you can see it in their hair. There's funny black light artifact things happening in their hair. But what's happening, and this is important for club lighting, is that they're overpowering the black light with white light. I'm pretty sure it's white light, and they graded this warm is what's probably happening. So likely they're keying them with something that's tungsten. And again, one, it's because these are good-looking people here. they're keying them with hard light again. We're seeing this hard shadow, and if we got close to their eyes, there would be this little dot in their eye. And it's a strong technique in this case because you want to keep the hard white light contained. You don't want it to spill onto the background. You want to keep the hard light just on the talent. So you're kind of separating the talent from the background. The background's got the black light on them, a little bit desaturated in blue, but the front people in the front here, they have white light where you basically get correct color representation. So her shirt is yellow, so it shows yellow. She's wearing jeans, a jean shirt, so it's blue. Her red is actually red, and their skin looks like the right color that it should be in. So that's what they've done here. And it's again kind of similar to Justin Bieber, but with Justin Bieber, they just kept keying them with the colors. So he would key Justin with the green and the red at the same time. Versus this one, they've opted to go more beauty, add white light over the colored light. That was a long description, wasn't it? But it's a cool way of lighting, and it's a really good way of approaching most club situations for music videos. And I've done a lot of music videos in this style. This is a pretty cool version of it. Maybe I'll show some of those in the future of some of the work I've done that's in this same style. So let's power through this last setup. Again, really cool stuff. Red backlight from the neon, likely it's just from the neon. The green doesn't quite make it to them, but you can see this blacklight stuff that's in their hair. See this color I've chosen? That's blacklight. And then with this, we get regular skin tones, regular red, regular blue, though the shadows have a little bit of that blacklight clipping. You can see the Alexa not quite handling that chroma all that well, kind of clipping there. But I like the setup overall. Again, just another photo of that. Can I tell? Okay, so they're balanced at 3200 Kelvin. Like I said, 800 ISO, back to 180 shutter. You can't get away with that 22.5 shutter shit when you're basically working with blacklight. It's just too dark. You can't do it right now. Let's call out some blacklight. Cool stuff over here. So they've written "Touch My Body" in blacklight, paint on a dark wall, and then hit it with blacklight, and you get that. It glows. And then someone's holding like a blacklight tube. You can get blacklight Kino flows. They're basically fluorescent tubes lined with like the blacklight phosphorescent material. And then you can kind of see out of here, it's all blue and dark in the background, but they're getting keyed with the white light so that they're color correct. Not too many slides left, guys, here. Again, here is some white light hitting them, but you'll see that it's not on the background. And then this is a blacklight source, I would guess. That purple and that pink, that intensely saturated, overly clipped chroma channel in most video cameras, that's blacklight in almost every case. And here are the last two frames I wanted to show. This is what it looks like if you didn't key them with white light in this scene. They would have red backlight, they would have a green key, and then they're just dark. So that's what it looks like. And I guess there's not a lot, there's maybe a little bit of blacklight. I think they have the blacklight off in this scene. So that's what they look like in just the neon setup. And then this feels very much like the Justin Bieber video. Again, keyed with neon, green neon background, instant color contrast, really cool look. Very Justin Bieber again. But when you key with the white, then you get this lighting setup. So cool. That was our look at the cinematography of Sistar, Touch My Body. K-pop music videos are really interesting to me personally. Kind of a mini goal in life is to go to Korea, and I think I'm going to have this opportunity in the future and just shoot some of these. They're really interesting projects to me. They're big sets. They're multiple days. They're big dance numbers, and you can kind of just get crazy with the lighting. And that's one of the things that I miss about music videos. I did music videos for quite a while, and now I pretty much live in commercials, kind of for the lifestyle. I really like, in the States anyway, like the lifestyle of shooting commercials is fun, and it's nice, and you get the toys and you get to do fun lighting, but you don't quite get to go this ham on the lighting. So this kind of stuff, I really like it. Despite all the dancing and the poppiness of it, just the cinematography of it. There's just a lot of opportunity to be expressive with it. And that's what I see happening here. And a lot of it's high key, and that's just appropriate for the music. But then there's those club scenes, and you can just do some cool stuff. So I hope you guys like this episode. And if it's your first time watching a K-pop video, There you go, K-pop videos. We've watched them together. I'll probably do some more. They're pretty cool. I know I said I was going to do commercials, and I'm working on it. I have some great commercials to break down with some really cool set photos. I just need to talk with the DPs a little bit first because they're not quite as straightforward as a music video. Music videos, like, it looks like this, and that's how we did it. Commercials, the ones I'm going to break down, have a little bit more narrative arc to them. And same thing as I'm moving this show into breaking down movies. That's a much bigger thing. The music video things are very short. This is what it looks like. That's how we did it, and that's why I like the format. But I am going to start breaking down some, more, just more complex things coming up. So thanks again for watching. As you're watching this now, this should be about February 1st, I believe, is when this comes out. I wanted to announce that my second product, really, for Cinematography Database is I'm going to announce it. And it's called Cinedesigner for Photoshop. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about on the podcast. There's going to be a video just about it. But I wanted to say that here for the YouTube channel listeners who are watching this show that it's essentially a library of 2D assets and like 2D pictures, more or less, of lights and cameras. And I've developed a workflow inside Photoshop to create really, really accurate and I think pretty cool and kind of beautiful overhead camera and lighting diagrams. So Cinedesigner for Photoshop. You should eventually be able to go to cinedesigner.com, and that's going to take you to the landing page, get to hear about it. And I guess because when we watch this, I can say this, I'm going to release Cinedesigner for Photoshop in March 1st. March 1st, Cinedesigner for Photoshop is going to be available at the Cinematography DB online store. And I think it's really cool. I've started to use it for my jobs. The insider community at Cinematography Database, they already have it. They're working with it. They're helping me beta test it. It's going to be good stuff, and I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you guys. So thanks again for listening. And K-pop videos. Cinematography Database show. I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Touch my body.